Good morning. I'm Linda Brent. On behalf of the National Training and Simulation Association, I'd like to welcome you to our 2021 NTSA webinar series. As you know, we started these webinars last year to support our membership, our industry, and our colleagues in the modeling and simulation and training industry around the world. Our webinar events continue to grow thanks to you and the great ideas that you provide to define our monthly topics to meet our interests and your interests and requirements. Today's seminar brings together experts from across the range of workforce development, from K-12 through post-secondary formal education to NTSA's certification program for modeling and simulation, our CMSP program, and workforce development, to include our ongoing efforts to document our industry through the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS codes. We welcome you today and give a big welcome to our speakers. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. David Fuzzy Wells, Interim Director of the Institute for Simulation and Training, University of Central Florida. Fuzzy?
Thank you so much, Linda. So I am your moderator today. We have, as Linda said, a panel of experts on topic of this workforce development, education, certification, and recognition. And so, we have asked each of our panelists to provide their insights and give us some background. That'll be about 8 to 10 minutes. We will have some polls, or we may have some polls. We'll definitely have time for questions. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Lindsey Spalding. Lindsey, would you say a few words about yourself and tell us about workforce development and education and technical programs?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning, or I guess almost afternoon, but I am the Director of STEM Programs for the National Center for Simulation. I also am working on a PhD at Florida Tech in Melbourne and really looking at the role that the MS&T workforce plays in strengthening STEM literacy in formal and informal K-16 learning systems. I also have a particular interest in the energy sector and helping educators use M&S immersive technologies to better understand and facilitate energy system projects with their students. So I want to share a little bit about the pipeline we've developed. So you can see, as the national modeling and simulation training industry, we've worked really hard to try and create an initiative to build our future workforce. And that initiative starts in kindergarten and works its way through. We're not going to spend time on kindergarten today, but as you see, we've got a diverse industry that covers many sectors, and the modeling and simulation is really now picking up at the high school level. And I think it's worth taking a minute to talk about that, because we at the National Center for Simulation in the Central Florida area worked really hard with our academia, industry, and our local school systems to help high schools build career technology education programs that support modeling and simulation industry. So by doing that, we created a need for the career and technical colleges and our universities to step it up and offer these students leaving our high school and technical programs a little bit more specific education as it relates to modeling, simulation, and industry training. And so I just wanted to share a little bit, and this is kind of our vision, how we have our workforce, coming in, supporting our workforce initiatives with our K through 12 educators. So if we look at the undergraduate programs at the moment, there are diverse undergraduate programs that support our workforce development initiatives. And really, the access, I think, to open source software and more affordable technology has led these programs to be able to scale up and offer to more students. And so we have information technology programs across the nation. And these are just a few little examples, whether it's data storage, architecture type, cloud networking, AI. They're there, and they're building students from the high school level to the technical school level to these undergraduate programs. You've got the computer science programs and engineering programs. And again, the access, of open source software and more affordable hardware has really enabled more students to access this type of learning. We have our digital media and gaming programs, and these students are the ones I have the most fun with because they don't feel like they will relate into a technical world like us. You know, they're all about making their video games, but when they learn that the skills that they're learning can be applied at Lockheed Martin's, you know, across the world, it really changes their attitude. And I spend a lot of time working with underserved minority communities, and it's fun to see that they can relate those skills forward. We've got engineering programs with multidisciplinary innovation labs opening up across universities across the nation, bringing students from multiple departments using modeling, simulation, technology tools, you know, to solve authentic problems together. The project management programs are out there, and now they have certifications specific to our industry. Medical programs are blowing up. Just here in Orlando, we have Lake Nona, but we've got the nursing programs, which are now including the biotechnology, bioengineering, healthcare simulation, and more. We've got general STEM programs are still out there supporting, you know, all of us and all of our industries. And so these are just the general, and this is, I think, how we're going to help see our industry grow with this support. But from the general, we have very specific programs that are being formed across the nation. And so through the National Center for Simulation and our workforce support, Orange Technical College has designed 2 different career certification degrees, one in modeling and simulation design programs, one in modeling and simulation production programs. And both of these are offered to technical college students and dual enrollment high school students that leave that school and are ready to either enter the workforce or continue their education. We've worked specifically hard with Seminole State College to help them develop a simulation specialization program within their AS computer science degree, and then specifically 120-hour Bachelor's of Science in Information Technology with a focus on simulation. And the benefit to the students coming out of high school or technical schools wanting to do this program, if they've earned the accredited NCS M&S certification, they can clip out of that first introduction course into that AS. So we're trying to give them a benefit for earning that certification. We also have our private universities like Full Sail who are offering Bachelor's of Science in Simulation and Visualization. And then we have a Fab Lab that support emerging technologies and projects. And it's pretty amazing if you get to visit any of these institutes. And these are only a few. They're popping up across the nation. But some of the simulation projects that are being built from students are really inspiring to know that we're going to have a workforce in the future that it's ready to tackle all of our global challenges. And so as you can see, students coming out of these programs have an option to either direct connect right to industry. And again, you know, we cover from transportation, homeland security to education to our entrepreneurs and our innovators who are trying to use, you know, incubators to start up. We're there to support them. And our graduate programs at UCF, I know, do that a lot. So at that point, I'm going to turn this over to Fuzzy and let him lead you through our graduate programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our graduate programs and compare a couple of programs. By way of a little bit of introduction, and actually let's start with a poll. Let's see if we can get our polling working. Let's open up a poll, see, you know, who else out there has an M&S graduate degree. I'm fortunate in the fact that I have a couple. I went through the Air Force Institute of Technology with their master's program. I was in the first class with M&S. And then I went to the Naval Postgraduate School for their PhD program, and I was the third graduate from that program. And so I have a little bit of perspective on Naval Postgrad and obviously perspective on UCF's program. So I'm going to close this in a second. Looks like we have about 15% of our group here that has a graduate education in modeling and simulation. So thank you for that. As was said, I am currently the Interim Director of the School of Modeling, Simulation, and Training at the University of Central Florida. And if you know anything about the University of Central Florida, it's probably that we do things big. We are one of the largest schools in the nation with over 72,000 students. And so that carries over a little bit to our modeling simulation graduate program as well. We're one of the largest graduate programs, if not the largest. We usually have in the neighborhood of 85 to 90 students. We're a little bit below that right now with 84, but I think some of that is driven a little bit by our current situation with regards to the pandemic. We're one of the original 3 schools. So we've been doing this for 20 years. The original 3 graduate education programs were UCF, Naval Postgraduate School, and Old Dominion University. Old Dominion, of course, graduating the first PhD in modeling simulation. So we've been doing this for a while, and it's really been a partnership across the academic and industry and military spectrums. We obviously take care of a lot of people who are mid-career. We don't offer a bachelor's degree, so we're getting people usually that have already had some experience. And so some of our students are a little bit older and a little bit more seasoned. And so that's something that we really appreciate their insights. I'll also say that we're probably one of the more broad interpretations of modeling simulation graduate education, where we cover a wide swath of the spectrum with regards to various disciplines. So it's not strictly training per se, although training is definitely a large component of what we offer. But training across a lot of disciplines and how we interact with humans in a lot of disciplines. So if you wanted your systems engineering or operations research or health systems, we can definitely cover that. We have that flexibility in our programs. So if you wanted to come to UCF, what would it mean with regards to admissions? For our certificate program, that's pretty easy. We just ask for a transcript and your resume or CV. If you're getting into the master's program, now you're starting to get to degree programs, we're going to want a little bit of your goals, what you want out of this program. Why are you seeking a advanced academic degree? Also some recommendation letters, so we know that other people can speak for you and your qualifications. You press into the doctorate, and you're now looking at, we definitely want to see your GRE scores and a little bit more recommendations and understand where you're coming from and kind of what your plan is. With regards to credit hours and courses, you see that we do have a core across. And that core is really, the things that you would expect, the differences between continuous and discrete event simulations, probability and statistic, agent-based simulations, research methods, and because we do have training in our title, how to deal with humans, especially human-in-the-loop simulations. You'll see in there that we do have I've highlighted in gold is our electives. And so this is where you can pick a focus area of your interest and what would probably be tied to your thesis or your dissertation. That doctorate, you see a lot of credit hours. Obviously, that's post-bachelor. So you can take those credit hours that you get from a master's program and apply it to those doctorate elective hours. So with regards to milestones through your degree program, with a non-thesis, you're going to have a capstone project, but with a master's, you're going to have a defense that you have to go through with regards to your thesis at the end. The doctorate is what you would expect with qualifying exams through the process, as well as a defense. And so the focus areas, and I'll remind you, because the print gets small and we're going to go through this pretty quickly, that in the handouts, you're going to have all this information. So you can follow along at home or take it and digest it later. But this really speaks to our focus areas. Where are you going to take those electives from? And so, we focus on the human aspect. So we're looking at the human aspect of cybersecurity, the insider threats, how you model human behavior. The human systems is where you're trying to, look at those human in the loop simulations and various team and individual performance. Your computer visualization, this is maybe where you're getting a little bit into the interactive or entertainment side of things, of getting that emerging media component. And the simulation modeling analysis, that's where you're starting to get a little bit more of a blend of your operations research and systems engineering.
Looks like we had a few technical glitches. I think we're all popping back in now.
Roger that. Welcome back, Fuzzy.
Thank you. Sorry. Renee, are we still up?
The IT scenarios.
Yep.
Yep, you guys are good to go.
All right. Thank you. These things happen. So, we do offer a fairly wide variety of our focus areas. And these are our electives of what you can specialize in well beyond just training. So let me shift a little bit to the MOVES program that I know a little bit about. I went through the PhD program. They obviously cater to the military officers, and that can be U.S. and foreign officers. They do get some civilians in there as well. And so these are, you didn't see time restrictions on the UCF programs. We're limited by, I think, 7 years. So you have a bit of time, and that's good for somebody who's working in the industry. In this particular case, these individuals are tasked as their assignment to go out and be a student. And so you can kind of compress the time schedules a bit. And so you have a 2-year master's program, a 3-year PhD program, which, across schools is pretty aggressive, but again, you're dedicated to that. They also offer certificate in medical modeling simulation, and they're starting up an applied modeling simulation in healthcare masters as well, coming up next year. So with regards to the 2-year graduate master's program, you can see how it's broken out into the first year is really trying to get your core aspects covered, and then getting into the second year of specializations that, again, the military community is going to be primarily focused on. So you're going to have things such as combat modeling. You're going to have, obviously, systems engineering, model-based systems engineering is really big in the defense industry. So, and agent cognitive modeling, that's, again, another aspect in the training systems that you're definitely going to see in that program. With regards to the PhD program, a 3-year program, and you don't necessarily see courses required in there. It's largely driven by passing various gates, exams. And so the first exam that you'll face is a written qualifying exam at the end of your first year. And so this is based upon some focus areas. And those focus areas are divided into groups. And so you have, pick 2 from one group and 1 from the other. So that kind of forces you into getting a broad range of interest sets. So just beyond your particular narrow focus of your dissertation, something else that you would also want to study and expand into, that's kind of like your minor. Then you have an oral qualifying exam within a year after that, and then you go through the same kind of dissertation defense. So these aren't the only graduate programs out there. There are many more than just the 3 that started off. We've expanded quite a bit. I've taken this from ACM's website. And so if your program is not on there, I'm sorry, talk to ACM, SIGSIM about that and get updated. For those that are outside of the United States, you can see there are a fair amount of, folks from, let's see, the UK and Germany and Norway, and I think Singapore was in there as well, all offering programs in graduate programs in modeling simulation. So with that, we'll end the modeling simulation graduate education background, and I will turn it over to Ivar Oswalt. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for the handoff. I appreciate that. So I'm Ivar Oswalt. I work for the Mill Corporation. I've spent a number of years supporting the Navy's modeling and simulation office when it was first formed in the 90s, all the way up to the current day, working in the areas of plans and policy, standards, education, outreach, and similar. So I'm very pleased to be here this morning to talk about the certification piece of a professional activity. So I'll talk about what a certification is and what it signifies, the value of the certification, both to the organization and to the individual, talk about the origins of the CMSP certification, and then go just briefly into the CMSP process and the exam and how it's structured. Talk about the reinvention of CMSP into CMSP 3.0. What are the activities that are part of that process? What are some of the things that we've been able to accomplish? And what are our aspirations? Where are we trying to go with 3.0? Because certifications are such an important part of professionalizing an activity. And then I'll just briefly talk about some of the current events that are going on in the CMSP domain space. So when it comes to certifications are really just the formal recognition by a body that a particular organization or individual has a set of characteristics that are deemed to be important. They are usually determined through an audit or a test, and they really do examine, again, either an organization or an individual. Examples that people are well aware of are CPA, the Certified Public Accountant, the Professional Engineer, PMP, the Project Management Professional, and then there's a whole set of IT certifications, Net Plus being one of those in the network space. Again, why would an organization want a certification? Well, it provides an indicator of legitimacy, and it also standardizes the quality levels that profession has. For a person, it demonstrates an individual's professionalism, commitment to the area of activity, a willingness to uphold standards, and a commitment to continue to learn in that space. And those are three things that exist in the Certified Modeling and Simulation program. You've heard about the academic degrees that are offered. One of the things that a certification provides is that currency. In order to remain certified, you have to have the continuing education units. You have to have presented within professional organizations and done that sort of thing. So the certification shows that commitment and that currency, no matter when you might have received your terminal degree. Again, for certification, it provides for the individual differentiation. The CMSP program, the certification provides insights into what's going on in the modeling and simulation community. We have a newsletter that I'll talk about later that talks about current events, that interviews key CMSP holders to look at their insights and where the profession stands. What are the key trends? What are they really seeing as leaders in this profession? It also has the associated networks that a professional organization has. And then, of course, there's always the membership perk. Right? Those CMSP is no different than that. In 2002, Ntsa, along with CISO and SCS, established the Modeling and Simulation Professional Certification Commission and the first CMSP. This commission is the one that oversees the CMSP program as subject matter experts. Ntsa provides that foundational set of activities and support, which is critical to the program, and it's that pairing of that Ntsa support and the subject matter experts in the commission that provide for the best of both and allow for your people who are interested in this certification to proceed to apply for it, and if successful, be awarded it. The intent continues from 1.0 to 3.0. It continues to be pretty much the same, to professionalize modeling and simulation, to engender confidence that when somebody looks at the CMSP logo behind someone's name, that it indicates a level of expertise that is significant, and that they can be assured that that professional understands the modeling and simulation space very well. CMSP 3.0 was initiated to really adapt the program and update it. As you can tell from the dates, from 1.0 to 2.0 is about 9 years. From 2.0 to 3.0 is about 9 years. In our profession, that's a very long time. A lot of things have happened since the 2.0 version. Things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, the rise of autonomous systems, cloud-based computing, virtualization, which is becoming a very important part of modeling and simulation as the attempt is made to take hardware and virtualize it and then incorporate that much more seamlessly and much more easily into modeling and simulation events. So what's the process for becoming a CMSP? Well, the applicant fills out an application, no surprise there, provides a resume, a list of references, pays a fee, and the Certification Commission reviews that package. They look at the required levels of education and job experience, and that's a trading scale. So more job experience allows someone with a lower level degree to apply to become a CMSP, and similarly, as you get into the more advanced degrees, you need less years of experience in order to start the process. If their applicant's approved, they take an examination online. There's a number of choices. The biggest one is whether it's a technical exam or a one that focuses more on management. And there are also opportunities for the applicants to exclude and include certain subject areas because M&S, as we all know, is such a wide and diverse topic area. We don't expect everybody to know everything, and so there's a selection at the beginning of the exam that allows you to focus on certain areas, although I will say there's quite a diversity of the questions in each of those set. If the applicant passes the exam and signs an ethics statement, then the certification is awarded, and again, it's signed by both NTSA and by the Certification Commission, and it's good for 4 years, and that's part of this recurring commitment that a CMSP professional makes to continuing to participate actively in their field and and continue to stay active and actively educated in the field. So what does the exam look like? The exam started off as in 1.0 being a very technical exam, very focused on software implementation, algorithms, and that sort of thing. In 2.0, it broadened significantly. And so, it has a series of questions that are drawn from an extensive question bank. Each student or each applicant they draw a set of questions from that bank, and these are the areas that they're drawn from. So domain-specific experience, those are the fundamentals of M&S. How are they defined? How do they interrelate? What's the history of their development? What are the supporting tools? So what are the resources and repositories that are available within the modeling and simulation community? What are the business and management aspects? So what are the ethics principles? Questions on workforce development, questions on the industrial development as well. In terms of specialized expertise, these are where you get into the application domains. So many of us are familiar with training, acquisition, assessment, support to operations, logistics. Both Fuzzy and Lindsey have talked about the growth in the medical profession and using modeling and simulation, and that's one that's included as well. So a wide variety of application domains. Then in modeling methods, Fuzzy mentioned the introduction or the core set of courses at UCF. That's what these modeling methods focus on. So stochastic, discrete event, continuous, those sorts of things. And then the domains of use. Aerospace is just one of many, logistics and some of the others that we've mentioned in terms of core areas. Specific software engineering kinds of expertise. So what's the modeling and simulation lifecycle? How do you design, develop, deploy, maintain, sustain, and then retire, this capability? How do you reuse it to best effect? What are the standards that are important in all of those phases? How do you verify, validate, and accredit it? What are the kinds of processes that you need to do that? And then finally, related areas. And the question on the right is from the related area of mathematics. It was one that was on my exam. And I put it up there to emphasize the fact, at least for me, this was very much of a learning experience. It has been a long time since I've worked with differentiable functions. It definitely was one that I thought opened my eyes as to the variety and depth of modeling and simulation. And it was for that reason that I am so passionate about 3.0 and being sure that this certification meets the current needs of our profession. So what are we doing in 3.0? Well, what we did first was we formed a series of committees and we provided a set of recommendations. These are the major areas that we looked at. We looked at awareness and exam, outreach to the certificate holders, outreach to the community writ large, to try to be sure that more people are aware of what CMSP is, how you go about getting it, what it designates, focusing on updating the exam. Again, as I mentioned, and we all know working in this profession, the technology, techniques, processes, have changed a lot. Back in the day, it was fed up. Now it's DCEEP when it comes to the engineering processes, and then refining the certification process itself, making it much more of an online experience, much more one where the resources that you need to take the test are moved from the bookshelf and into the computer, and so those are the major areas. I'll talk some more about initiatives within each. But we provided a set of recommendations to NTSA, and NTSA looked through them and said, and prioritized them, picked the ones they thought were going to be most useful in the near term, and then those that had the longer term perspective. So I looked at both of those. And now we're in the implementation stage. We've started a few months ago to work in these areas. And some of the things that we're doing in these areas, and again, I talked about the activity status and aspirations. There is a lot of activity, a lot of work going on, but there's a lot to do. We aspire to make this CMSP a much more robust capability. So improving awareness within government, industry, and academia. We're planning a set of roundtables within each of those communities to better understand what their requirements are and what their capabilities either are to deliver and support CMSP in that sense of the academic institutions, or what are the requirements in terms of industry and what do they need. You will see if you go to Indeed and others, CMSP mentioned from time to time as a requirement for a modeling and simulation job, but it's not as mentioned as much as it should be, and it's not included in Department of Defense and other governmental RFPs as much as we would like it to be. So that's what we're working on in that area. In certificate holder engagement, really developing a community of practice, having a newsletter, holding events. We had a State of the Nation at the last ITSIC. We're going to hold a virtual one here shortly, and we will have another one in person at the next ITSIC to be sure that we understand what the community needs. Looking into mentorship programs to effectively utilizing the skills of the retired CMSP folks that are out there. The next interview for our next newsletter will likely come from a retired Marine Corps 06 PhD who has some interesting insights on the behavioral side, the cognitive psychology side of modeling and simulation. And so also considering things like scholarship programs for CMSP members in STEM areas. Another revising the exam is the first one was really early knowledge effort that was conducted, and so it's a question of trying to extend that body of knowledge even further, and then we're considering, although we are starting with a master's level CMSP certification as it exists today, considering having gradations within that exam. So all the way from the novice between, and also some sub-certifications, maybe modeling and simulation, VVNA authority or something like that. And then the process I mentioned, really trying to make it much more streamlined, much more user-friendly. And I should mention also, as part of the outreach, using and employing social media environments like LinkedIn much more effectively, and being sure that they're nicely correlated with the other NTSA capabilities that are out there, so that it's an integral set of offerings. And so those are some of the implementation activities that are going on now, and some of our aspirations. We are always interested in people contributing to those, meeting those aspirations. We're aggressively working to roll out 3.0, and we look forward to, not this year's ITSIC, but hopefully in next year's, providing a presentation overview of what we've been able to accomplish. The newsletter is now being distributed. It's shown, a little clip of it showing up on the right. Never hurts to start with a comic, so we put that one up the top. But we cover like I say, the interview of a professional, current events that are upcoming, a review of job listings, so people get an understanding of the diversity of employment opportunities. And we are always looking for people who might be willing to spend a bit of their time on the committees, or as mentors, or as question generators. We're fortunate that our community has a diversity of folks that are engaged, and so we will be looking for those questions to be generated for the next exam. So it's again a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm now very pleased to hand it over to Dr. Eric Weisel, who's the Executive Director of VMASC, for him to talk about, taking the next step, which is really to institutionalize modeling and simulation, both at the state and the federal level. So Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Ivar. I'm Eric Weisel, Associate Vice President for Applied Research at Old Dominion University and the Executive Director at ODU's Virginia Modeling, Analysis, and Simulation Center. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about NAICS. So the North American Industry Classification System, and the modeling and simulations representation within the NAICS. So this is a discussion that's been going on in the modeling and simulation community now, I think, for 20 years or so, where the discussion has really been about getting a NAICS code for modeling and simulation. So what NAICS is, it's a federal standard for collecting statistics across the United States by business or production category. And what we have been doing is submitting a series of comments to the organization at the census that operates the standard to try to improve our representation as a community within the NAICS. So I'm going to start with a poll. And I'm going to end with a poll. So the poll that I'm going to start with is to rank the importance of finding your business, partners, or suppliers when searching federal databases using the term M&S or simulation or a similar sort of term. So I'll leave that open here for a few minutes while I'm talking and keep going. So the NAICS is put together on a production-oriented basis. And so it classifies or collects industries and products based on the same or similar production processes. And then those codes are then used to classify businesses and activities, for example, in federal contracts. So there's an organization called the Economic Classification Policy Committee that updates changes to the NAICS, and this is done on a 5-year cycle. So in the previous cycle, NTSA and a coalition of industry organizations submitted its third a series of comments to the ECPC for consideration for the 2017 NAICS, which came out just a few years ago. Within those 113 uniquely numbered comments, there were 4 specific sets of comments about establishing codes for modeling and simulation in the NAICS. So based on those comments, they were evaluated, and the ECPC evaluated to leave the treatment for modeling and simulation the same, i.e. no new codes for modeling and simulation. But the ECPC did support adding the phrase modeling and simulation as part of the NAICS description for the scientific research and development series of NAICS codes. And so this is an example, I think, of the question or the objective that we need to be seeking in terms of pursuing NAICS. And so when I first came into this the discussion, the question was really about getting a NAICS code for modeling and simulation. And I think that's not quite the right question. I think really the right question is to make sure that modeling and simulation is appropriately represented within the NAICS structure. And based on that interpretation, the last round of updates to the NAICS was a tremendous success. And so in that round, modeling and simulation was listed by name, again, in the scientific research and development series of NAICS codes. And I think moving forward, then what we need to be looking at is what are our objectives as a community. And let me talk a little bit about, based on that, some of the challenges that we have in pursuing our representation in the NAICS and what I think our objectives ought to be. So again, the NAICS are identified by production processes. So I think in order to continue to improve our representation, we really need to have a solid conversation within the community about how modeling and simulation, whether you're looking at it as a service or simulators or simulation products as a product, how those are different from other products and how those production processes are different from other products. So if we can't clearly articulate how modeling and simulation is different from computer programming in general, then we're going to have a hard time making a compelling argument for a different set of NAICS codes specifically related to modeling and simulation. Now, that's important because as we are operating our businesses, operating our universities, looking for partners, competing for federal work, we want to be found, and we want to be able to find our suppliers and our partners when we are searching for those businesses. And NAICS codes are one of the primary ways that that those searches are completed. So I'm going to open up another poll right now, and this poll is to ask to rank the importance of collecting data nationally on the modeling and simulation industry. All right, so that poll is open. So as I'm wrapping up my comments here, sort of moving ahead, what I think we need to do as a community, one is really come together in terms of ought to be continue to improve our representation in NAICS. So we had some success in the last round of changes, and I think the next improvement that I would like to see in terms of our representation in NAICS is including the modeling and simulation in terms in the searchable components of the NAICS structure. So while modeling and simulation is in the description of the R&D NAICS codes, if you go into the NAICS structure and you search, for example, say the term simulation, flight simulators will come up, but none of the other NAICS codes that our organizations commonly use will show up in that structure. So I think that's a great next step. And then I think the community needs to continue to have the discussion of how the types of things that we do as an industry are different from other related industries, and then work with our stakeholders, our partners, all of the folks that are engaged in our industry ecosystem to identify across all of those folks, including for many of us who do a lot of work with the government, what our customers' needs are with respect to identifying our organizations by NAICS code. So with that, I think, Fuzzy, we are back over to you.
All right. Let's look at some questions here that we've received. And so I'm going to start off first with, I think, Ivar. A couple of questions in the Q&A tab, and you can keep on adding those in. Let's see, there's two from CMSP. So is there an activity to include CMSP as a requirement in an RFP? Maybe this is both for you and for Eric. And then we'll start with that, and then we'll move to the NATO M&S working groups question.
Okay, thank you, Fuzzy. I appreciate that. There is as part of that outreach activity in CMSP 3.0, there's a series of conversations going on with the contracting officer representatives with the corps to educate them in terms of modeling and simulation and what more particular types of criteria and language they might be willing to use in their RFPs and requests for proposals. There's also in at least one of the services a development underway of a contract reference guide. That contract reference guide talks a lot about CDRLs and DIDs and statements of work and RFP language and all that kind of thing. One of the things that it does mention are types of contracts, best value or least cost technically acceptable, and how in those using those contract types, it is appropriate to assess a business's ability to perform based on criteria like certifications. So the activity that I'm aware of is still in draft form, but at the Department of Defense Modeling and Simulation Enterprise, there has been interest in continuing to pursue that.
Yeah, Fuzzy, and I think so. This question is, I think, very related to the NAICS issue, and so the CMSP is about identifying individuals who are experts at modeling and simulation, and the NAICS effort is about identifying organizations that are experts in modeling and simulation. And so, I think moving forward, maybe that's something that we should add, from my perspective, to the NAICS list, is working more closely with the group that's pursuing advancing CMSP, because of the commonality of mission there, identifying expertise at both the individual and organizational level, and not only from the standards perspective, but also from the requirements perspective. And so one of the things that will help us drive improving our position within NAICS is if our customers can articulate a need to differentiate organizations that have expertise in M&S that aren't adequately tracked nationally in data right now.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Is there? Has CMSP been been discussed in any of the NATO M&S working groups? Ivar, do you know if we've had those discussions with them?
I know that there is a NATO M&S Center of Excellence in Italy, and that there's a whole set of activities that are done. I know more about the standardization activities and some of their interfaces. We haven't explicitly reached out to NATO or Partnership for Peace or other coalition partners. I will say, though, that in the last CMSP professional development workshop that we had at ITSIC, the international community was very well represented. So that is something that we talked about at the last executive meeting for 3.0 as an area that we should pursue and focus on.
Yeah, and I can add in that we've actually had our international friends reach out to join us on our CMSP 3.0 initiative.
Wonderful. And I see that Eric has answered Fred Hartman's question. Ivar, is there any certification for people who specialize in simulation hardware?
Not that I'm aware of specific to simulation hardware. That's more of an A+ kind of certification that CompTIA offers currently, as I understand it, which is hardware oriented, but not specifically simulation hardware.
Okay. There were actually some questions that were, please keep on bringing in your questions, but there were some questions that were submitted as part of registration. And one of those is, I think Eric will put you on the spot for this. What do you see as the relationship between modeling simulation and the current industry and DoD digital transformation efforts? Okay,
so digital transformation is about using digital technologies, whether it's through innovation or workforce engagement, and changing how we do business. Essentially, how do digital technologies change our everyday lives? And so I certainly see modeling and simulation as a major component of digital transformation. But one of the things that I think as a community that we need to be aware of is there are a lot of adjacent technologies in that digital transformation space. So while modeling and simulation is the one that we think about a lot, but there's also a very strong push with data analytics and machine learning and liked AI types of technologies that are firmly now in the commercial market space. And so, as we move forward, I think we need to understand that the boundaries between modeling and simulation and some of these adjacent technologies are, no pun, but are kind of fuzzy. I think that moving forward, we need to be able to clearly articulate how we're different, what value that we add to this digital transformation process, and how modeling and simulation works with these adjacent types of technologies in the digital transformation space. So one of the topics that comes up a lot in digital transformation is Industry 4.0, which is this idea of bringing technologies like modeling and simulation, AI, machine learning into initially the manufacturing community, but now this Industry 4.0 concept is expanding beyond manufacturing. And I think that we just need to make sure that we are continuing to make our case for the value of our technology set alongside all of those others, because they are all moving quickly, and we need to do the same.
Thank you. Question for Lindsey. What base skill set is recommended for entry-level modeling simulation professionals?
Well, at the base level, we're looking that they have a basic understanding in the different types of modeling and simulation. But also that not just that computer science piece, but they have, the innovative thought process, the critical problem solving. We want them to have an understanding of logistics, and how to go through a project from start to finish. And so, we're helping to develop these skills, but we're finding that it takes a lot of practice at that high school and undergraduate level to build these system skills. Really, we're trying to build systems thinking, and we're hoping that our students are coming, out of these educational systems with that ability to problem solve through a system, from the start to finish, identifying problems, analyzing them, and being able to identify, what simulation type would be best to help them solve the problem. So those, I think, are basic skills, but then you get into, the specialized skills, whether they are into, definitely discrete modeling or, something on the more visualization side. So I think in general, those are the basic skills we're looking for. And then we're helping develop at a young age, but then, as our participants move forward, they go into their specific areas. But ultimately, we're wanting to bring, that multidisciplinary learning and collaborating together. And I think that's what's going to help increase our STEM literacy and help everybody understand you don't just have to be into STEM, but STEM education does drive our economy.
Very good. Eric, there's a question in the Q&A about which NAICS code is the M&S phrase included in.
Yeah, thanks, Fuzzy. So it's in the narrative description for the research and development NAICS code. So there's one for research development in the life sciences. There's one for research and development in social sciences, and there's one in research and development for the rest of the sciences. And what I'll do is I'm pulling those up, and I'll answer that in the text here in just a couple minutes.
Okay, and I think probably just time that for one last question, because I think this is going to speak to all of us. How do we encourage modeling simulation professionals from other disciplines such as wargaming analysis and logistics to what they view as mostly the training community? And I'll kick it off. So, I actually got into modeling simulation as a scientific analyst. So I was an operations research person, operations research officer in the Air Force. And so I started there from that focus, and then moved into the training community, then moved into the test and evaluation community, back into operations research, and finally ended with training. Modeling simulation the entire way through, but I've kind of wandered through all those spaces. And so therefore I've been able to get into some of these other organizations that, such as like MORS, the Military Operations Research Society. They hold a symposium. I think that, one of the things that we do is we reach out to those other communities and let them know that this isn't just training. That, for example, the CMSP is not training focused. It may have started in the training community, is definitely sponsored by Ntsa, but it is goes well beyond just training, modeling and simulation for training. Ivar, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, I would just follow up on that sort of with a similar theme. I think each of the communities in the modeling and simulation is aware of what it's doing and takes pride in it, but those communities, again, the Navy, the naval space that focuses on training, assessment, acquisition, and experimentation. So I think, especially more recently, that footprint has grown and will grow even more, as the medical example shows.
Lindsey or Eric?
Yeah, Fuzzy. I think my thoughts there are, as we we're working on the NAICS issue, one of the things, and to some extent, we had the same discussion with the CMSP group, Ivar, is reaching out to other communities that are users of simulation. And one of the things that we found was there are communities out there that are saying the same thing that we're saying about modeling and simulation, but we don't talk to each other. So I think that's important.
And I have to agree with Eric on that one. The more that we communicate as a social network, the better we are to, build our future workforce.
That's great. And so I think we've wrapped it up, and I will turn it over to Linda for closing remarks. Linda. Ooh, I'm not hearing you, Linda. So Linda would probably like to thank us all for being here and also remind everyone that the next NTSA monthly webinar is March 31st. It is all on 5G, AI, and modeling, simulation, and training. And please join us for that. We really encourage your participation in these events. Did I do okay, Linda? Great. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to continuing the discussion with you in future venues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.